Well, hello everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we're very, very fortunate and honored to have Maestro Strategic Partners Eric Sanchez and Stacie Monahan. Thank y'all for being here today.
Thanks for
Thanks for
having
having
us.
us, Ken. Looking forward to it.
Yep, man. And so I just wrote a new book, and I'm not right in the middle of reading it, but why don't you tell us? Because it's funny, but this used to be my nemesis, man. This was a guy I had to fight every week when I was trying to grow my law firm. We were in the same market, and they were killing me. I was always like second. Well, never always the bridesmaid, never the bride, but I never gave up. So tell us a little bit about each one of you, about yourselves and what you're doing and how you got to where you are, and then we'll get into talking about stuff that can help our listeners and viewers.
Sure. You want to go first?
Yeah. So Eric and I worked together for almost 20 years in a law firm. And prior in my former life, I was a commercial and personal lines adjuster. Eric likes to tell me I shed the horns and tail from that, but I spent most of my career now at law firms. And while we were working at that law firm, we got to do some consulting with case management software and with some other firms. So I had the opportunity to be in and out of shops and work with law firms at all levels over the years across the country. And I love doing it. I love the work. And then our book about invested leadership, what always spoke to me in my entire career was growing the careers of others, kind of paying it forward and bringing up the next generation of leaders within the law firm. So this just was the labor of love for us, I think, to write this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as you know, Ken, we've been in the trenches a long time against each other, now with each other in a lot of ways. And I've always been told I'm a little bit like Forrest Gump in my career, where I was able to do law firm operations, I was able to do the black farmer case, I was able to do intake and case management software. And as Stacie said, we've been in and out of hundreds of law firms, from the big monster firms to boutique litigation firms that would rather gouge out their eyes than advertise. But we saw the same things over and over again, is that people kept stumbling into classic leadership problems, which created really toxic cultures. And when we kind of looked at the whole panoply of our experience and what we could do to help people, we thought, there's a lot of books out there with the system or the way or how to build your firm. And I'm certainly not diminishing those books, but we felt like no matter how good your system is and no matter how smart the guy at top was, if you didn't have your heart right, if you didn't have your leadership right and your culture right, you ultimately weren't going to succeed. And that's why we wrote the book.
I think you're absolutely right. I was actually in my executive meeting this morning, and I was saying to the other group, I said, I know there's a lot of things into building law firms. I said, but you know what? I really think the foundation is the people. Getting good people that work together as a team, that are, Mickey said at our meet, she says, well, you always want the next one you hire, you want to be smarter than the last one you hire. You want them to be more of an A player, which I love Lencioni's book on 5 dysfunctions and eight how to get an A player or whatever, and keep them. And I think I've been around a long time, too long probably, but I look at the really great law firms and they keep really great people. I mean, and they grow. I've seen phenomenal growth with these firms that really got this really super duper people, and they got good leadership, what I'm saying. So tell me, what is good leadership? What's your definition? I mean, you wrote a book on it. Tell me what it means.
Yeah, quite honestly, I think the best definition of a leader is somebody who puts other people first and replicates the very best of themselves. And at the end of the day, it is always about putting yourself second to other people. And, I will say I had the benefit of being a very young Marine. I joined the Marine Corps the Monday after I turned 18. And to my great surprise, we were taught that your number one job in the Marine Corps was, of course, you think of the mission first and all that. Of course, that's true. But it's taking care of the guy next to you. Whenever there's 2 Marines together, somebody's in charge. And it doesn't mean in charge like you're the boss. It means you're responsible to making sure they have dry socks, you're responsible to make sure they've eaten, making sure they're well rested. All of those things I learned it very young that it was really about putting other people first. And we have fundamentally seen that time and time again in our careers, where when people know that you genuinely care about them, they'll run through walls for you. I mean, they'll do anything for you. If it's not about the paycheck, it's not about the benefits. People think that, and they might come for that. They won't stay for it.
Yeah, I think somebody, I don't know if it was an interview or a book I read, but somebody says, the job of a leader is to coach other people up to be leaders. Your
Absolutely.
job is, I think that's why you see a lot of law firms, the ones that are really successful, they've got like these in-house universities, and they're always sending people like, uphill. I tell people, you see anything that you think you can better yourselves, I'll pay for it. If it's a school or seminar or books or whatever, because I want them to be better. I've often said that my success has really not come from me. It's come from me putting my ego down and hiring people smarter than me and being okay with that. And I think do you see that as a problem in some of the PI firms? Because to be a great PI lawyer, you really got to have a hell of an ego. I think it's universal, but I would think that you would see that. I know I've seen it over the years. It's not, it's at least 50-50. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think some of it is probably the measure of a poor leader when they're trying to retain the knowledge to keep some level of import above others and keep themselves at a higher level. When really leaders, like you said, it's their job to bring everybody else up, to create other leaders. That's what a real leader does. That's what they're inspired by. So it is problematic in a lot of firms. You do have people at varying levels at the top managing the firm that want to retain that position and possibly even feel threatened by bringing up these other leaders that should be smarter than them. Hopefully they are.
I will say, Ken, two things that you said that really jumped out at me. One is I'll answer your question first, is I don't think that having a healthy ego is mutually exclusive to being a good leader. In fact, I think I have certainly been accused of having a healthy ego, but I think anybody that knows me and anyone who's worked with me or for me knows that I will lay down in traffic. I've written people checks that nobody knows about. I've helped people move. I've done things to care for people in a real way where they're at, well outside of the four corners of the work week. And what you talked about, when you were saying you're willing to offer, people to kind of enrich themselves. What you're talking about is investing in your people. That's the whole premise of our book is invested leadership, is investing in your people. What we do is if there's a thesis of our book, it is essentially, if you look in corporate America, you'll have a CEO, and the CEO will have a COO. They'll have a chief marketing officer. They'll have a chief HR. You get what I'm saying. They have people in their key verticals. And what we do is we say, leader, person who's running a business, take that same principle and apply it to your people. Don't try and be plastic and pretend and bullshit your people about caring about them. Be who you authentically are. If you're not the guy that wants to go to social events, then surround yourself with a team that likes to do social events so your people's needs are met authentically. And what we're seeing is, and we're big believers in coaching, and I think everybody should be reading and getting coached, and all of those things are fantastic. So I don't want to be misunderstood by your listeners. However, we see it as fundamentally the biggest mistake is someone will go to a conference and say, oh, I've got to go run to my shop and create a safe space. Well, you might not be the best person to create that safe space. It might be somebody else.
Yeah. I don't even think we ever said, what's the name of your book?
The name of the book is Invested Leadership. Is not only anecdotes of our own career, but we highlight leaders, both good leaders and bad leaders. We will talk about Steve Jobs, and we'll talk about his kind of first tenure at Apple, and then his second. And they were different. They were not the same, as kind of bristled as he was. And he was two very different people in those things. We talk about who's the CEO of Pepsi. Jim Mattis, former Secretary of Defense, General in the Marine Corps. All of these people have these great lessons in leadership, and we highlight them in the book.
And they're all very different from each other.
Yes.
So it's not just saying that one way is the right way.
Yeah. I think what you said about being authentic, I think that's the big deal. I've always tried to do that. I mean, I ain't gonna say it's work, but the deal is, I mean, you get what you see what you get with me. I mean, I'm not trying to blow any smoke. I mean, I'll admit if I don't know something, and I try
Well,
to
you're one of the most authentic people I think I have met in this business, and there is not, and that's nothing but a compliment. And I'll tell you, one of the things I've always tried to do is kind of what you see is what you get. We tell our clients we are candid, and you are always going to know where you stand with us. If you are looking for a yes person, or you're looking for somebody to kind of drop in your shop and take your idea and run with it, we may not be the right people for you because we're going to tell you the truth
It's
based on
truth
our
to power.
experience.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is such a necessary thing. And that's just because we try to be authentic in everything that we do.
I think it shows. So what do you think that, I know you said they all can be different, but what do you think, is there like 2 or 3 qualities in great leaders versus good leaders or bad leaders?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, just right off the bat, if I had to pick one really good thing, and Stacie's very good at this, is like you have to have a high degree of emotional intelligence. You really have to understand where the other person is at. Everybody goes through shit in their life, and if you're just not authentic and you don't realize, hey, but for the grace of God, you could be in that person's situation. You don't consistently tolerate bad behavior. Not saying to let the inmates run the asylum, but I do think that, leading with grace is an underrated superpower in the workplace. Personally, I don't know if you have others that you want to.
No, that, and I think showing your own vulnerability is what breaks through to other people. If you're constantly putting on this shield of being like the tough, like nothing gets to you, that's not relatable to anybody else. So they're not going to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. What do you think is the most overlooked leadership challenge lawyers have, or management and law firms of scaling their law firms?
Oh, well, pretty much position gives you, or makes you a leader. That's the biggest fiction in America. There are plenty of people who are bosses who just are absolutely terrible, and their rules might be followed because they've got the purse string or the whip, but they're not leaders by any definition of being a leader. They might be managers, but they're not leaders.
Boss and leaders are not synonymous titles for people.
And I think that it's really dangerous in law firms, especially. I mean, I can tell you in talking with your mastermind group, I think everybody kind of gives like the big head nod when you talk about the Peter principle, where someone's been promoted to their highest point of failure because they're a great paralegal doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to become a great leader. And so you have to move beyond just the work product generation or just hitting the KPIs, and you have to look at them as a person and understand how they're going to relate to their peer group and subordinates. And are they going to bring people up? Are they going to knowledge share? Are they going to, like you said, are they going to invest in their people? Because I'll tell you, one of the things that Stacie does really well is she's been a mentor to so many people, and she gets genuine joy and pleasure out of seeing them grow into something that they weren't.
Yeah, I understand that. That gives me purpose too. I feel like I've helped somebody do something. Well, or especially if something I screwed up in my younger days, and I could say, "Hey, you don't want to do it this way," whatever it is, because I tried it, and it don't work.
Yeah, we tell people all the time that we learn more from our failures than our successes, and so we're often sharing our failures with other people as a cautionary tale.
Yeah, I call them learning experiences. Some of them just hell of a lot more expensive than others.
Yeah, that's true. There's certainly some with greater consequences. I guess another thing I want to say too, Ken, is I don't want to be misunderstood on any of this, because some people I think who are more classically trained in business, particularly Gen Xers and older, they tend to look at this more as kind of touchy-feely bullshit. And I think what they have to recognize is millennials and younger, millennials, Gen Z, they need purpose. They need to understand that you care about them. And so it's not really so much about what you want or what you think or what you care about. Yes, I understand it's your business, but if you're intending to grow and you're intending to succeed, especially with how important technology is becoming, you're going to be more reliant on key people, not less. And so you better understand what it is they need, and you better be able to meet that need.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's one of the things I like to ask people when I'm interviewing them for a job. I mean, like, where do you see yourself? I mean, what's your personal goal? What's your professional goal? I mean, it might be climb Mount Everest, or it might be, I want to own a house. I don't know. It could be anything. And I think if you can help them get there, I mean, you ain't got to be, like you say, a handout, but if you can help them get there and show them how to get there, support it, I think they're going to.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
They're going to be your biggest fan,
and we're going to be their biggest cheerleaders.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. I mean, she just hit it right there. Like, if you are truly confident in who you are and you're bringing something to the table, why would you be threatened by bringing somebody else who's also good to the team? Why? I've never really understood that. It would be like being on a football team and you're the running back and you don't want a good quarterback. Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's why you see a lot of the really good pro teams, what I've seen. I mean, it's nice to have a superstar and all that, but usually you can have all these superstars if they don't play together as a team, and they're not selfish trying to, I've seen these guys that got to score 50 points every night in basketball. Their teams never win. It's the guys that lead and assist and do this. Caitlin Clark's a good example of that.
Yeah.
She's very unselfish. She gives the ball away. She can shoot it like hell, but she gives it away half the time.
And you know what? You're touching on another important point, and that's this idea of unselfishness. From our perspective, if you build this environment that this idea that we posit in invested leadership, it's the caring should be reciprocal. If you're genuinely caring about people, they're in kind going to genuinely care about you, and therefore they're going to care about your business, and they're going to care about your agenda, and they're going to care about what the future of your business will be. If you do not do that, then what you've done is you've created a transactional environment. You pay me well, I'm staying. Well, you're only another paycheck or someone else's paycheck away from losing that key person if the only tether is economic. It's a matter, you're on the clock. So now you have even more pressure for your business to continue to grow because you're going to have to continue to meet those economic needs. Yeah. I mean, imagine any key relationship you had, friendship, spouse, whatever, and it was all transactional based on what you were bringing to the table 100% of the time. Who could meet that test? You can't.
You want somebody who's going to be able to stick with you through the tough times too, and not just the pleasant bad times.
Yeah. And I've had those. I don't know if they've done another, but I know they did like a big survey one time. I think the government did it. I'm not sure, but if I remember correctly, I might be wrong on this. You probably know better than I do, but it was like the number one reason people quit is they hated their boss. Their boss was
yeah.
And number two was like didn't feel appreciated.
Yeah.
Like money was like 3 or 4th. I can't remember, but I remember money was not number 1 or 2.
No, Gallup has done a number of surveys on this, and it's just abundantly clear. Little things like having a best friend at work. And what does that mean, having a best friend at work? It's because somebody there actually cares about you. They're meeting you where you're at, you're meeting them where they're at, and that is all that it takes, is to have that one person that cares about you. Imagine if your culture was replete with people that authentically and genuinely cared about each other. We're not talking about tiptoeing through the tulips and handing out dollar bills and all of that. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about taking the time to say, oh, how was your kid's softball game? I know that was a big deal for you last week. What happened there? Little things like that. They just make an impact.
So I think I might know the answer after talking to you now. I didn't when I wrote this question down, but I'm still going to ask it. So how do you measure leadership success? I mean, I think just growth is not enough. I think there's something.
Yeah, I think the greatest measurement of a good leader is replicating that leadership role, creating great other leaders to take on, not just generationally, but, the greatest joy as a leader has been seeing someone that I've coached in leadership, and I see how they're now coaching the next leader under them. I mean, that is like the stamp of approval on everything for me.
Yeah, I think there's different strategies to answer that question. I think you can do it organizationally, you can do it at a department level, and you can do it individually. I think individually, success can be measured as simply as making a difference to somebody. I have had people, Ken, that I have fired for cause that have come back to me years later and thanked me for that conversation. More than one person. This has happened pretty consistently in my career. So I take great individual validation out of that, even be able to taking that very difficult message and still being able to have a positive out of that.
And because it was an honest conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's, when you have those and that's what's been lacking, people will always appreciate that.
And at a department level and an organizational level, if you can scale and scale with excellence, you have probably exhibited good leadership, because what you've done is you've replicated your leadership ability at a subordinate level and have allowed them to move vertically. And that is probably the number one measure of success. And of course, there's a lot of economic realities in there. You've got to look at your, margins, and you don't want to hire like a drunk sailor and all of those things. Assuming all things being equal, pound for pound, we believe you're going to get more out of a person if you care about them. You're going to get a real 40, a true 40 hours of work, and probably more like 50 or 60 if you really care about somebody.
Let me ask you, because I hadn't talked about this a long time. Net promoter scores. I know they have them for like your clients and stuff like that, and I understand that. Are you seeing any law firms use net promoter scores for their employees? Like, I think the question is, would you refer a friend or family member to work at this law firm?
Sure.
Scale of 1 to 10 or whatever. And I think that, I don't know. You know anything about it? You like them, hate them?
Well, I think net promoter scores are fundamental for businesses for sure. On an individual basis, I think what you're referring to, we like 360 reviews. They have to be done right. They have to be truly anonymous, and you have to be really willing as an organization to, I think, grow from them. So 360 review, you're asking if they're anonymous internal surveys that you're asking all the way around. So if I'm the leader, I want to give it to my whole organization. What do you think about me? How timely am I in giving you my work product? What's the quality of my work product? All of those sorts of things you ask all around 360, top to bottom, without regard of rank. And what you'll find is a pretty true to form representation of who you are as a person and as your perception as a leader. And we've seen some shops do that, and they stopped it because they didn't like what was coming out. Well, you missed the point of the exercise.
You can't be an ostrich. You can't stick your head in the sand.
Then you find yourself surrounded by sycophants, and eventually those organizations die.
Yeah. I don't do it anymore. I used to do a lot of consults, fly out to people's offices. And one thing I would do before I went there is I'd give like a 30 question, multiple choice, and a few fill in the blanks, but most, or maybe 4 or 5 essays, questions. And I tell them, all their employees, everybody, fill one out anonymously, put it in an envelope, and then put all the envelopes in a big envelope and mail it to me. And I would sit down and read those and kind of see what the deal was. I could tell what 80% of the problem was before I got there without ever speaking with anybody. Just reading. So I think I like what you're saying about 360, because I was kind of just doing it all around, like, I was trying to get the vibe for what the problems were, because staff, the people, they know what the hell's going on. They know what the problem is. They know better than the top.
It's funny that you say that, because we do something very similar. We also, when we have an engagement with a law firm, we'll go down there and we will say, we want to meet with the leaders of your firm. And what do you think they say invariably? They give us their list of attorneys. I said, we're not interested in talking to your attorneys. Because what happens? If I ask a question to attorneys, they're already thinking about the line of questioning. They're thinking about why I'm asking the question. They're not going to give me the genuine response that I'm looking for. Say, no, we're looking for people who are leaders, in fact, if not in title, in your firm. It's very likely the receptionist. It could be if your firm's big enough, the mail person or the ops people. They know what's going on in your shop. And I mean, we've had people, when we do these things, we'll very often ask for a private conference room with a box of Kleenex, because I can't tell you how many times we've had people cry about some issue, something that's going on in that firm that's really hurtful to them or impactful to them. And we talk to these principals time and time again, and they're wowed. They can't believe how much information we have. Just the same experience that you had, just from talking to the people and getting that information out. The best tonic for success is that.
So delegation, I think firm owners, but also think we were talking about before we started this, a lot of your management people, like your office manager or your law firm administrator or CEO, whatever you want to call them, kind of who's managing the office. Do you see a lot of times problem with them letting go and teaching other people and delegating and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so we do find that a lot where people have a hard time letting go, again, for a number of reasons. It could be, some kind of insecurity on their part, or we've always done it this way and we've been successful, so why would we change? Some people are just change averse, but we encourage people to build their teams. Sometimes it's great if you can get the people actually in that position to help build their team truly. That's beneficial. But the biggest lesson to, the principals of the law firms is you can't have that one single point of failure where that person is the only one who knows how to do something in the firm, and God forbid something happens to them, you're kind of screwed, so you just never want to set out to have that situation happen, because people fall ill unexpectedly. You can get hit by a bus tomorrow, and we want to break through to people who are in those positions are, you care about the firm. You don't want them in a bad position if something were to happen to you.
I think there's a couple of challenges and potential solutions to that. So I think I'm the founder of Non-Delegators Anonymous. I was the guy that nobody can do it better than me, so I've got to do it myself. And I did it for a number of years, and I worked. I think there was when I was at the firm, I was, 3,200 hours a year, I think was my average for a span of like 10, 15 years. I kept my time like a defense lawyer down to the five-minute mark. And I just was crazy working. What I had to realize is, first, fundamentally, my view was firm first. So I think number one, you have to look at the individual and just assess who they are. Because if they've been promoted, as I said earlier about Peter Principle, they probably don't have the sophistication or vision to have that firm first mentality. And so you have a fatal flaw, I guess it's not fair to call that a character flaw, but it is certainly a professional flaw if they can't develop that kind of firm first view. Second, for me personally, what helped me was I had to say, I can accept that this role or this task can be done 80% as good as I was doing it. And that 80% is probably sufficient for what the firm needs, so that I can shift my focus to the thing that needed my 100% attention because it was in the best interest of the firm to do it. So it may be that I could have counted the paper clips better or more efficient or faster than the ops guys. But really, was it that big of a deal on the trajectory of the firm if that guy made a mistake or did it 80% as fast as me? No. And so it's a matter of having the confidence and the internal discipline to prioritize those things and understanding where the firm's agenda is, and then delegating the things that are less of a priority or the things that are delegable. For example, if I had to do something technologically or, write some SQL statement or something complicated, I probably couldn't delegate that to somebody else, and I might have to do that myself. But the vast majority of things are not the exception. There are plenty of things that can be delegated.
And that's how we often get through to people in these positions. It's like, look, help us help you. We want you to be your highest and best use. So doing all these things and not letting go of any of them is not going to get you there. And that speaks to people because they're like, yeah, there's all these things that I want to get to, but I'm so bogged down in all the day-to-day stuff. And that usually speaks to people. It's, let's get your highest and best use.
This has been probably, Ken, one of the biggest areas of growth for our business has been coaching the non-attorney executive in law firms. That the principals have just kind of thrown up their hands. Like, I know this is a good person, but they are just doing everything, and they're the restriction. Everything's funneling through them, and the firm can't go where it needs to go. And so what they'll do is they'll drop us in there and coach them out of that and try to develop their own. And we're pretty good at triaging the type of person that we're working with. And if it's a confidence issue, we can work on that. If it could just be a good old fashioned organizational issue, and we bring in solutions like time boxing or other ways to kind of organize themselves, etc. Probably more of a long-winded answer than you wanted for that question.
No, I think it's a big problem that I see it everywhere. I mean, we've got people in masterminds with this problem. You know, it's people like these people won't let go of anything, and yet they don't want to fire them because what are they going to do? They don't feel like they've got all this intellectual capital that they've invested in this person. They've got that, they know so much that if they feel like it's, and you know, I always said, you know, nobody's indispensable, including me. I proved that when I sold my law firm. I left it still going, right? I mean, you know,
right.
Anybody, I mean, you know, everybody's replaceable. Might not be quite as good, but they're replaceable. It's like you got to get off.
It's not just that, Ken. You're also helping that person.
Yeah.
You know, even sometimes we need help even when we don't want the help. But when you take a step back, a few steps after it's done, it's like, man, that's easier. Because I know that I sure enjoyed not working 3,000 hours a year when I finally stepped away.
Yeah. And I think I'm real big on this. I learned this probably 15 years ago with strategic coach with Dan Sullivan, was that you want to leverage your strengths and delegate your weaknesses. You know,
100%.
I mean, there's some things you can't delegate, like you said, but I really like to try to do the things I really love to do, because that's usually what you're good at. Stuff that you love, you get excited about. And mine's marketing, just to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it. I mean, you know, but
that's exactly what we talk about in the book, Ken, is like focus on your strengths. If you're the visionary for your firm and you're all business and you have no time for the touchy-feely stuff, we're not telling you to change at all. What we're saying is surround yourself with people that recognize that reality and allow them the freedom to address the needs of your people so that you can focus on the marketing and growing your business or doing the things that you like. We totally agree with that premise. Yeah,
I agree. So if somebody wants to get up with you or ask you questions or hire you, what's the magic number or the magic email?
Yeah, so pretty simple. You can go to our website. So the name of our company is Maestro Strategic Partners. That's a mouthful. So the URL is MStrat Partners, MSTRAT partners.com. And you can send an email to info@mstrat.com, and that goes to both of us. So you'll be talking to us directly. It's just easier to send that out. But we're pretty prolific email responders. We love talking shop. So we're happy to talk to any of your listeners for an hour or so and help them in any way we can.
Well, I believe you because you do you do teachings and for our mastermind members. Those that don't know, they are mastermind when we're not having in-person meetings every month. We have either a meeting or a training, and they've been doing our trainings this year and really doing a hell of a good job. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So I think that says all that needs to be said. I would not put you up there in front of my mastermind if I didn't think you did what you were doing.
True story.
That's true about you. Yeah, bottom line, and trustworthy too. So anyway, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you soon, and thank you for speaking at the summit a couple of weeks ago.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
You did a great job, and look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Thanks, Ken.
All right. Take care. Yeah. Until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.